Well, Wiltshire is to be one of the first places to try out a new system for warning women that their partner may be violent. It's called CLARE'S Law, after a woman who was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. But there's been criticism from some domestic violence campaigners who say the money could be better spent. Paul Baltrop's been to meet one victim, Stella.
I was an absolute, wreck, just scared to death, not sleeping, you can't function. That time was a lot of just punching to the head, being held down, restricted, having things thrown at you, anything that was around you could just have thrown at you, or it was to the extreme as well, like emotional, just, Towards the end it was horrific. On the last occasion I actually thought I was going to die. I just remember calling out for my mum and just thinking, that's it, I'm going to die now.
It's reckoned domestic violence leads to the death of 2 women every week. Stella sought help. Her former partner was successfully prosecuted. It was only after the trial that she was told he had earlier criminal convictions. If she'd known that at the start, things might have been very different.
I didn't associate myself with any of his friends because they weren't the type of people that I would associate myself with. It was easy for him to keep everything a secret, but if I'd have known, there's no way I would have been with him.
She's been getting help from Swindon domestic abuse charity Home Truths. They work alongside Wiltshire police, who'll soon have new powers to warn women who ask for information. A welcome but limited improvement, they say.
There obviously are downsides if people have never been convicted for domestic violence, and one of the biggest issues is that people don't talk about it. Only 20% of people ever report, and of that 20%, a very small minority ends in prosecution.
So in essence, this law could only have a very limited impact?
I think so, yes.
Wiltshire is one of 4 places where the scheme will be trialled. Officially, they say they're waiting to hear how the scheme should be run. Unofficially, there's some frustration that the Home Office still haven't given them the guidance that they need. And it places an extra financial burden at a time when budgets are being cut. Some experts think that's foolish. The charity Refuge warn it's untried, untested and costly.
The majority of domestic violence abusers are not known to the police. Only 16% of domestic violence incidents are reported to the police. We're also concerned that the government is spending precious resources on introducing a new scheme, new legislation, when the legislative framework is already in place. The police already have the powers to disclose.
But when and how those powers are used varies from force to force.
It's quite difficult ground. We do have the ability at the moment to tell people about the offending history of a partner if we think that they're significantly at risk, and we can do that. We can share that information with the right level of authority in cases where we think there's a serious risk of violence.
For Sandra, the future looks better. She's rebuilding her life and hopes by going to the police, other women may be protected.
Well, with me today is a senior law lecturer from the University of the West of England. That's Dr. Rachel Fenton. Nice to see you. Is this practical?
Well, it's a pilot. I think we have to remember it is a pilot to start with. So we're going to find out information from that pilot. When we talk about whether it's practical, we have to work out, I think, about whether there's a cost benefit, whether or not people are actually going to be helped by this. So we could say, I think, to start with, I have some reservations about the scheme.
So what sort of information could the police actually hand out?
Well, that is, of course, yet to be decided. Now, the coroner who, in Claire Wood's case, talked about previous convictions of that type. So it looked like she was talking about domestic violence-related offences. Now, the problem that we have is that there is no actual offence of domestic violence. So we're talking about convictions for different things, for example, assault. It could be harassment, for example. There's no actual offence. So we can't just say, OK, you can disclose something about domestic violence. Somebody somewhere has to make a decision about what it is we're going to disclose.
And what sort of checks would the police have to make before they decide that they can give the person turning up at the police station that information?
Again, the pilot will determine that. We don't yet know. It's quite likely, I think, that it's going to follow the public disclosure scheme for child sex offenders. And there's quite a rigorous process there. So you can't just simply turn up at a police station and say, I'd like to know some information, please, because my child has a relationship somehow with an adult about which I want to know information. It's a very rigorous process, and not just anybody has that right to information.
Let's bring in the politicians, Robert Buckland. I mean, it does sound a little bit vague.
Well, it's a pilot, as Rachel says, and it's being based upon two principles, the right to know and the right to ask. And there's a subtle difference between the two. The right to know would involve the police being proactive and disclosing information with the sort of safeguards that Rachel has in mind. The right to ask would be a more general right of the individual to go in and, subject to those safeguards, obtain certain information about their partner. Is it likely to happen
in the real world? I mean, you go out, you have a couple of nice dates, you start to get fond of each other, then one of you pops down to the police station and says, look, I'm thinking of moving in with this person, but first of all, should I know anything about him? That would kill any romance stone dead, wouldn't it?
Well, I agree. I don't think you can interfere with the natural process of human relationships, but for all the cases that we've seen, not only Claire's case, but the case we've just seen in the film, you know, there are people out there who would have benefited from more information and who would have changed their pattern of behaviour or their lifestyle if they'd known certain important facts about their partner. So I think to dismiss it out of hand before the pilot comes of age, I think would be the wrong approach.
OK, well, I guess it's not perfect, Gus, but, I mean, it's 2 women a week, 2 people a week being killed as a result of domestic violence. You've got to do something.
And obviously, if that would tackle it completely, I'd back it 100%. Unfortunately, though, I think we're going in the wrong direction. What would happen if a woman would go in and find out that their partner hasn't committed any crime, and yet they are actually in danger, whether their partner hasn't been convicted in the past, as Rachel was saying, or whether it's a first-time offence, which is, you know, looming. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop the offence.
But worth having a go, do you think?
It's worth having a go. But I think we should be putting our funds into centres to help women who have been abused or individuals who have been abused. I agree that's after it's happened, but also to have a lot more counsellors. So if someone feels threatened in a relationship, they don't go to the police to see whether their partner's had a prior conviction. They go to a counsellor, because it is whether you feel threatened that you should act upon, not whether they've been convicted or not. You should
just get out of the house, shouldn't you?
And it's never quite that easy as well. We need to make sure there's resources so women can actually go.
A refuge or something
well,
like that.
Yeah, for example, you've got 3 children and your husband's away journey. You know, where do you go? You can't just pack up your bags and leave.
You've got reservations as well about who should be told this information. I mean, what's your solution to that?
Well, I think having the sort of safeguards in place, such as having a multi-agency assessment, so the police, social services, other concerned agencies making a decision before that disclosure.
So someone turns up at the police station and you want a multi-agency risk assessment conference?
Yes.
Before they get told any information?
I think there should be
So you pull social workers and police off the streets to sit down and have a yarn about whether this person should know the history?
David, yes, there should be safeguards in place. It shouldn't be a willy-nilly...
You've got the resources for that?
Well, it happens already, as has been described in the case of CLARE'S law in relation to paedophile disclosure. There needs to be a safeguard system so that the right information is disclosed to the right people. I would be very much against some sort of just turn-up system that allowed you to turn up at the police station and get information just like that. I think that would be wholly wrong. There need to be safeguards.
Are you reassured?
I think we have to wait and see what the terms of the pilot are going to be. But I'm confident that it will not be a system where anyone can just turn up and have that information, that there will be a rigorous check.
But it needs to be fairly simple, doesn't it? Otherwise it's just going to get bogged down.
I think we have to be extremely careful about who we disclose information to. And I think that there has to be a risk, and there has to be a risk assessment.
Why is this information secret, though, anyway?
Well, as the film pointed out, there is already power at common law to disclose the information. The trouble is there's no consistent approach across the country, which is why the government is looking at ways within the existing law of improving the system.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Rachel, thanks very much indeed for coming in. Just hang on there for a moment. Thank you.